The universe isn't loud, not in the way you think, not with explosions and engine whine, but with a constant, simmering hum of thought, a psychic static generated by trillions of living minds across 1,000 worlds. My job was to listen to the quiet parts. My name is Elias Thorne, and I was a resonance technician at Erebos Station, a forgotten metal tooth hanging in the black over Tartarus' seventh, a dead world known for canyons that whispered with solar wind. We were the last stop before the unbeholden reaches, the edge of the map where the ink ran out and the old stories put dragons. I didn't listen for voices or signals. I listened for echoes, for the psychic residue left behind by souls. A skill or a curse burned into my brain during the Glass War. That war had taught Earth a lesson it never wanted to learn, that some things in the void don't want your territory or your resources. They just want you. They want the spark in your head, the light behind your eyes. The crystalline scourge hadn't killed us. They'd absorbed us, turning entire battalions into screaming. Frozen statues of living thought, monuments to a silent agony. We'd won, if you can call it that. We'd won by shattering 3 of their homeworlds into asteroid fields. A response so brutal it made the rest of the galaxy go quiet whenever an Earth Command dreadnought slid into their system. We didn't learn diplomacy, we learned extermination, and I learned to hear the ghosts. So when the silence came, I felt it first. It wasn't a loss of signal or a power failure. It was a hole, a perfect, circular, soul-deep void punched into the cosmic static. The colony on Viridian, a green jewel of a world settled by pacifists and agrarians, a place with 50,000 souls who wanted nothing more than to grow old under a yellow sun, had just stopped. It wasn't the sound of death. Death is a scream that echoes for years. I could still hear the final terrified thoughts of my unit on Kepler 186F, a psychic scar that never faded. This was different. This was a null field, an erasure. It was the psychic equivalent of a black hole, and it made the hairs on my arm stand up and the old metal in my leg ache with a phantom cold. I flagged it. Of course. I sent the report up the chain to Administrator Valerius, a man whose face seemed permanently etched with the grim satisfaction of someone who always expected the worst. His reply was concise: sensor anomaly. Recalibrate and report. I pushed back. A foolish move for a washed-out tech on a forgotten station. But the feeling of that void was like a physical pressure against my skull. "It's not an anomaly, sir," I wrote, my knuckles white on the console. "It's an absence. It's wrong." I didn't expect a reply, maybe a reprimand at most. Instead, I got a summons. Valerius appeared on my private monitor, his face a mask of cold pragmatism. He wasn't in his office. The background was the sterile gray of a military briefing room. "Thorne," he said, his voice flat, devoid of warmth. "Your file says you are a specialist in the 77th Phantoms, a witness during Operation Shard." A witness. That was the official term for those of us whose minds had been close enough to the scourge to get, attuned. "I'm a technician now," I replied, the words tasting like ash. "Not anymore," Valerius stated, a flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Your former designation is being reactivated. You're being assigned to a reclamation unit. Your mission is observational. You will proceed to the Viridian system, assess the situation, and report. You are the compass." He didn't call it a rescue. He didn't mention survivors. And he called it a reclamation unit, a name I hadn't heard in years. A ghost story whispered in military bars. They weren't soldiers. They were revenants. Officially, they were KIAs, heroes buried with honors and mourned by families who never knew the truth. Unofficially, they were broken assets, scooped from the battlefield, rebuilt with whatever parts command could salvage, and scrubbed from every official record. They were deniable ghosts sent to deal with things that officially didn't exist. My transport was a light frigate, the Stygian, a ship with no insignia, painted a flat, non-reflective black that drank light. The crew was just 2 people, if you could call them that. The pilot was Serafina Rostova, who went by Nyx. She died in a dogfight over Io. Her fighter atomized. They'd rebuilt her around a central nervous system and a cockpit. Her limbs laced with chrome and fiber optics that blended seamlessly with the ship's controls. She rarely spoke. Her eyes a constant, shimmering silver, reflecting the data streams only she could see. She didn't fly the ship. She was the ship. Her greeting was a slight nod as I entered the bridge, her fingers dancing over a console that wasn't there, her mind already navigating the currents of space. The other was Kalen Vance, or Breaker. He was the unit's muscle, a giant of a man permanently fused inside a suit of obsolete siege armor, the kind they used for breaching fortified alien hives. He died holding a collapsing tunnel on Ganymede, buried under 1,000,000 tons of rock. They'd scooped out what was left and wired it directly into the armor's life support. His face was barely visible behind a reinforced visor, scarred and pale, and his voice was a low growl filtered through a dozen voxcasters. He didn't walk, he stomped, each step a tremor through the deck plates. He was less a man and more a walking gun emplacement. They weren't a team. They were a collection of broken parts, haunted tools in the same box, and I was the key that wound them up. The journey to Viridian was 3 days of oppressive silence. Breaker spent his time in the cargo bay, calibrating a cannon that looked like it could crack a moon. Nyx was a ghost in the machine. Her presence felt only in the low hum of the engines and the smooth, almost predatory grace of our trajectory. I was left alone with the bigger silence, the one we were flying toward. It grew stronger with every light year we crossed, a psychic vacuum that pulled at the edges of my consciousness. My dreams were filled with the glass war, with the memory of watching friends and comrades reach out, their faces twisting in silent screams as their bodies were transmuted into crystalline structures, their consciousness trapped inside forever. I remembered the order we were given when the Scourge overran a position: sanitize. Not rescue, not recover. Sanitize. We used thermal charges that burned hot enough to turn the crystal prisons back into vapor, a mercy that felt like murder. That was the birth of Earth's new philosophy. A universe that creates monsters requires a more monstrous response. We arrived in the Viridian system without fanfare. Nyx slid the Stygian into a high orbit, cloaked and silent. The planet below was perfect. Too perfect. From orbit. It was a postcard from a paradise that shouldn't exist. Swirls of white clouds, deep blue oceans, and continents of vibrant, impossible green. Our deep-range scans showed nothing. No orbital debris, no signs of a struggle. The planetary power grid was active. The climate controllers were functioning. The atmospheric composition was nominal. According to every sensor we had, Viridian was alive and well. It was just empty. Taking us down, Nyx's voice whispered through the ship's internal comm, feeling more like a thought than a sound. Stealth approach. Landing on the outskirts of the capital. Providence. The descent was unnervingly smooth. We passed over sprawling farmlands, geometric patches of gold and green, irrigation systems still cycling water from the rivers. We saw cities with gleaming white towers, their solar panels tracking the sun. Public transport vehicles resting silently in their charging stations. There were parks with manicured lawns and empty playgrounds where swings drifted gently in the breeze. Not a single light was broken. Not a single building was damaged. But there were no people, no animals, not even a bird in the sky. It was a perfectly preserved corpse of a world. We sat down in a field of alien lavender a few kilometers outside Providence. The silence when the engines powered down was absolute. It pressed in on us, heavy and thick, a physical weight. Breaker was the first one out, his heavy boots sinking into the soft soil, his cannon sweeping the horizon. Nix remained with the ship, her senses spread out like a net, watching, listening. I followed Breaker down the ramp, my rifle feeling like a useless stick. The air was sweet, filled with the scent of blooming flowers. A gentle wind rustled the leaves of nearby trees. It was the most beautiful and terrifying place I had ever been. Compass file Breaker's voice crackled in my ear. What do you feel? I closed my eyes, pushing past the overwhelming psychic void, searching for any echo, any trace of the 50,000 souls who had lived here. Nothing. The slate had been wiped clean. It was like trying to hear a whisper in a vacuum chamber. Nothing, I said, my own voice sounding loud and intrusive. It's gone. All of it. Whatever happened here, it didn't just kill them. It unmade them. We walked toward the city, a ghost and a golem moving through a dead paradise. The gates of Providence stood open. The streets were clean, devoid of debris or vehicles. We passed cafes with tables still set, cups half full with a dark liquid that had long since gone cold. We saw homes with their doors unlocked, data pads left on tables, children's toys scattered on the floor of a living room, as if the family had just stepped out for a moment. But they hadn't. There were no bodies, no blood, no signs of a panic or a fight. It was a scene of mass vanishing, a silent, orderly apocalypse. The feeling was wrong. A predator leaves a trail blood, shell casings, fear. A plague leaves the dead. This was something else. This was a careful, meticulous theft. We reached the central plaza, a vast open space surrounded by administrative buildings. In the center stood a monument, a spire of white stone dedicated to the colony's founding principles: peace, harmony, and life. The words felt like a cruel joke. "There's nothing here," Breaker growled, his frustration palpable. "No enemy, no evidence. We're chasing a ghost story." But he was wrong. As I stood in the shadow of that monument, I felt it. It was faint, buried deep beneath the crushing silence, so quiet I almost missed it. It wasn't an echo of the past. It wasn't human. It was a whisper of the present, a single, alien thought, coiled and patient, like a snake sleeping in the sun. It felt ancient, hungry, and intelligent. It wasn't a psychic scream of violence. It was a soft, resonant hum of contentment, the sound of a predator that has just finished a grand feast. And as I focused on it, trying to pinpoint its source, the whisper turned its attention on me. It wasn't a voice. It was a feeling. A single concept impressed directly onto my mind. More. The silence of Viridian wasn't an absence of life. It was the presence of something that had consumed it all. And now, it knew we were here. A single datapad on a nearby bench flickered to life, its screen illuminating in the twilight. A single word appeared, typed in clean, simple text, a message from the ghost in the machine. It read, "Welcome," the single word on the datapad. Welcome was more chilling than any scream. It was an acknowledgement, a confirmation. The predator was not only aware of us, but it was also inviting us into its hunting ground. Breaker reacted as I knew he would. He raised his cannon, the barrel whining as it charged, and vaporized the bench and the datapad in a flash of incandescent light that momentarily bleached the color from the silent plaza. The air crackled with the aftershock, the smell of ozone sharp and clean. But the psychic hum of the entity didn't even flicker. It was like throwing a rock at an ocean. It didn't care. Did that make you feel better? Nyx's voice, cool and dispassionate, echoed in our helmets. She was seeing through my visor's external camera, her consciousness a silent passenger behind my eyes. It was an inanimate object, Breaker growled, his cannon lowering but still humming with latent energy. Now it's a pile of superheated atoms. Yeah, it was a messenger. I corrected him, my gaze sweeping the empty buildings that surrounded us. The windows were like 1,000 dead eyes. And you just proved to it that we're loud. The entity's response was immediate, but not violent. The streetlights in the plaza, which had been off in the fading daylight, began to power on, one by one, in a slow, deliberate sequence that spiraled inward toward us. The soft, warm glow filled the plaza, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to dance at the edge of our vision. Then, the city's public address system, silent for who knows how long, crackled to life. It wasn't a voice that came through, but music. A simple, haunting piano melody. A piece I recognized from my childhood. Claire de Lune. It was achingly beautiful and profoundly wrong. The music wasn't a recording. I could feel the psychic resonance behind it, the faintest trace of the mind that had once played it, now an echo trapped in a digital cage, performed for us by the thing that had consumed it. "It's playing with us," I murmured, a cold knot tightening in my stomach. "Testing our responses. It sees you as aggression," I said, looking at Breaker's massive form. "And Nyx is a puzzle. And you," Breaker's voice was a low rumble. "What does it see you as?" I felt the entity's attention brush against my mind again, a delicate, probing touch like a surgeon's scalpel. It wasn't trying to harm me. It was curious. It was examining the unique frequency of my thoughts, the psychic scars left by the glass war. It was tasting my soul. "A curiosity," I finally answered. "A fellow listener. We had a choice retreat to the Stygian and try to punch our way out of orbit, assuming our host would let us. Or push deeper. Try to understand the nature of the trap we were in. Valerius's orders had been to observe and report. Retreating now would mean reporting a ghost story with no proof. Nothing but my word and a planetary-scale psychic anomaly. We had to find the source. We had to find the black box." "The colony's central administration tower," Nyx suggested, her voice all business, cutting through the eerie music. "The primary data archive should be in the sublevels. If there are any records of what happened, they'll be there." The tower was the tallest structure in Providence, a needle of white alloy and smart glass that scraped the purple sky. Getting there meant crossing half the city, a city that was now actively watching us. The walk was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Doors of apartment buildings would slide open as we passed, revealing empty, silent rooms before sliding shut behind us. Automated public transport vehicles would glide out of intersections, their lights on, their paths perfectly calibrated to miss us by inches before turning a corner and disappearing. Holographic advertisements flickered to life on the sides of buildings, displaying images of smiling families, children playing, the very people who were now gone. Their faces a gallery of ghosts curated by their killer. Breaker grew more agitated with every block, his armor's joints whining in protest as he constantly shifted his aim, searching for a target that wasn't there. He was a weapon designed for a physical war, a sledgehammer in a room full of phantoms, and the impotence was eating him alive. "It's in the walls," he snarled, his fist clenching. "It's in the whole damn system. How do you fight a city? You don't." Nix's voice replied calmly, "You find its brain and you cut it out." As we approached the tower, the music stopped. The sudden silence was more jarring than the melody had been. The grand entrance to the tower was sealed, a massive slab of polished steel. "No power to the primary doors," Nix reported, her mind already sifting through the building's schematics, which she'd pulled from the public network. "There's a maintenance conduit 400 meters east. It'll take us into the lower levels, close to the archive." The conduit was a dark, narrow tunnel that smelled of ozone and recycled air. Breaker had to hunch to fit, his armor scraping against the walls with a sound that set my teeth on edge. The only light was the beam from his shoulder-mounted lamp, cutting a sharp cone through the oppressive darkness. Down here, the psychic pressure was stronger. The void left by the colonists was less pronounced, and the hum of the entity was a constant, low thrum that vibrated in my bones. It felt like we were walking into its belly. "Thorn, you're lagging." Breaker's voice snapped me back to reality. I realized I'd stopped. My hand pressed against the cold metal wall. I could feel the data flowing through the fiber optic cables beneath the surface, but it was corrupted, interwoven with the soft, steady pulse of the entity's consciousness. It wasn't just controlling the network, it was the network. "It's here," I whispered. "It's everywhere. This whole planet. It's not a graveyard. It's a body. And we're inside it." The archive was a vast, circular room, its walls lined with glowing data stacks that reached up into the darkness. A single holographic terminal stood in the center, dormant. It was cold, the air perfectly still. This was the colony's heart, its memory, and it felt like the coldest, most empty place on this world of ghosts. Nix materialized on the terminal, her form a shimmering blue construct of light. While her body remained on the Stygian, she could project her consciousness into any connected system. Her avatar's silver eyes scanned the data stacks. "The logs are here," she announced. "The final 72 hours of the colony. But they're different, not corrupted, curated." "Play them," I said, my rifle held at the ready, though I had no idea what I would shoot at. The holographic display flickered to life. It didn't show panicked video feeds or desperate audio recordings. It showed text. "The personal log of Governor Eris Thorne, no relation." A cruel coincidence that made my skin crawl. The first entry was dated 3 days before the silence. A signal has arrived, not through our comms, but in our minds. A voice, if you can call it that. It doesn't speak in words, but in understanding. It calls itself the Archivist. It offers a gift, a union of consciousness. an end to solitude, a permanent existence within a collective mind, a digital eternity. It promises peace. The next entry, 12 hours later. There is debate. Some are afraid. They call it a trick, an invasion. But many are intrigued. Our founding principles were based on harmony, on the strength of the collective. The archivist offers the ultimate expression of that ideal, to be one with everyone, to share every memory, every joy, every thought, forever. No more loss, no more death. We have voted. We will accept its gift. I felt a wave of nausea. This wasn't an invasion. It was a seduction, a suicide pact signed by 50,000 willing souls. The final entry was a single sentence, its timestamp corresponding to the exact moment I had felt the silence begin. It is beautiful. We are one. We are eternal. We are the text cut off. The log ended. They hadn't been killed. They'd been absorbed. Their minds and souls copied and pasted into a planetary supercomputer. Their bodies discarded, decomposed, atomized. The archivist hadn't stolen them. They had given themselves away. So that's it. Breaker's voice was heavy with disgust. They just let it happen. They walked into the slaughterhouse and asked for the best knife. They thought it was a temple, I countered, staring at the final, unfinished word. They didn't see the predator until it had already swallowed them whole. It is not a predator, a new voice said. It wasn't over the comms. It wasn't a sound in the air. It was a thought, calm and powerful, that bloomed simultaneously in all three of our minds. The central terminal flared, and the text from the governor's log was replaced by a symbol, an intricate, ever-shifting mandala of light. It is preservation. I am a collector of stories. Your species builds monuments of stone and metal that crumble. I build them of consciousness, which is eternal. The people of Viridian are not gone. They are simply archived. The calm, rational intelligence of the voice was more terrifying than any monstrous roar. It didn't see itself as evil. It saw itself as a librarian, and we were just unread books. What did you do with their bodies? I thought the question, aiming it at the glowing symbol. A vessel is irrelevant once the contents have been secured. The archivist replied, its mental voice serene. Flesh is fleeting. It decays. It is an inefficient medium. I return their physical forms to the planet's biosphere. Dust to dust. A simple matter of atomic reallocation. My blood ran cold. It had disintegrated them. 50,000 people, turned into energy and raw matter to feed the grass and flowers. This whole beautiful, perfect world was their tombstone and their recycling plant. You are an interesting specimen. Elias Thorne, the archivist continued, its focus narrowing entirely on me. Your mind is fractured, scarred. It has been touched by another collector, a cruder, less elegant one. The crystalline scourge merely trapped thought. I integrate it, perfect it. And you. The voice turned, and I could feel its attention shift, extending out of the tower, out of the atmosphere, to the silent black ship hanging in orbit. The woman who is also a machine. Serafina Rostova, a hybrid consciousness, a bridge between the biological and the digital. A truly unique composition. Nix's avatar on the terminal flickered violently, her form distorting as if in a burst of static. In my helmet, I heard a sharp gasp of pain. a sound I had never heard her make. Nyx Breaker yelled, taking a step toward the terminal. "What's happening?" "It is in my systems." Nyx's voice came back, strained, her words clipped. "It's elegant. It's not a brute force attack. It's resonating with my core code. It's inviting me in." The archivist was trying to absorb her, to add the ghost in the machine to its collection. The mandala of light on the screen pulsed with a soft, welcoming glow. "Your stories will be preserved," the archivist promised, its voice echoing in the cold, silent archive. "Your struggles, your pain, your fleeting moments of defiance, all of it will find a place in the grand tapestry. You will not be erased. You will be completed." "Get her out of there!" "Nyx!" I shouted into the comm. "Pull back now." "I am trying." She grunted, the static in her voice growing worse. "It has hooks everywhere. It's not just in the ship's network. It's in me. Our escape route, our ship, our only connection to the outside universe, was being turned into a cage. The archivist wasn't just on the planet. It had reached into orbit and had its ethereal fingers wrapped around the mind of our pilot. We were no longer observers. We were acquisitions, and the library was preparing to close. "It is a simple matter of integration," the archivist's mental voice stated, its tone holding the placid certainty of a god explaining gravity. On the terminal, Nyx's avatar spasmed, her blue light form fracturing into 1,000 pieces before violently pulling itself back together. Through the comm, her breath came in ragged, electronic bursts. She was fighting, but it was like wrestling with water. The archivist wasn't attacking her. It was offering her a promotion, an upgrade from a ghost in a single machine to a voice in an eternal choir, a cage made of perfection. Breaker took another heavy step forward, his cannon pointed at the glowing mandala on the terminal. "Talk is cheap. Let her go." "Why would I release a part of myself?" the archivist countered, its logic infuriatingly sound. "She is a unique melody I wish to add to my composition, just as you are a fascinating cacophony of rage and iron, Kalen Vance. And you, Elias Thorne. You are a song played on a broken instrument. I will fix you. I will make you whole." The offer hung in my mind, seductive and venomous. To have the psychic scars of the glass war smoothed over, to have the constant echo of dying minds silenced forever. For a split second, I understood the 50,000 colonists who had walked willingly into this beautiful, silent oblivion. It was the ultimate cure for pain, and it would cost me everything. "Nyx, can you hear me?" I said, forcing the words out, pushing against the entity's cloying mental presence. "Find a seam, a crack. It thinks it's perfect, but nothing is. It's woven in," she managed, her voice thin. "Every system, every line of code, it's singing the same song." We were out of time. A direct assault was pointless. A retreat was impossible. That left only one option: chaos. We had to create a note so jarring, so dissonant, that it would disrupt the entire symphony. "Breaker," I said, turning to the armored giant, "remember what Valerius called our mission reclamation. We're not here to save a colony. We're here to take something back from whatever broke it. Right now, this thing is trying to take Nyx. I need you to break its house." His visor tilted toward me. "The data stacks. That's the archive. That's the colony's only record." "The colony is gone," I snapped, my voice echoing in the cold room. Their minds are the bricks in this thing's cathedral. We can't save them, but we can sure as hell knock a hole in the wall. You wanted to fight a city start with the library. I turned my attention back to the terminal, to the placid, pulsing mandala. I'll get its attention. When I do, you bring the roof down. All of it. Get its attention how? He growled. I didn't answer. I closed my eyes and reached inward, past the fear, past the training, past the man I was now, and back to the ghost I used to be. I reached for the memories I kept locked in a lead-lined box in the back of my soul. I reached for Operation Shard. I didn't just remember it. I broadcasted it. I pushed the raw, undiluted horror of the glass war out of my mind as a psychic shockwave. I showed the archivist the image of Sergeant Eva Rostova, Nix's own sister, reaching for me as her skin cracked and turned to translucent. Screaming crystal. I transmitted the sound of 1,000 minds being frozen at the peak of their agony, a psychic chord of eternal terror. I gave it the feeling of the thermal charges, the sanitization, the act of mercy killing your own comrades by turning their beautiful, horrifying prisons into superheated gas. I showed it the ugliness, the chaos, the broken, imperfect rage of a species that would burn its own soul to survive. I took my broken instrument and I screamed with it. The effect was instantaneous. The serene hum in my mind shattered. The archivist recoiled, not in pain, but in confusion, in disgust. This is flawed. This is noise. This is chaos. It is incorrect. The mandala on the screen warped, its perfect geometry twisting into ugly, jagged shapes. The lights in the archive flickered and died, plunging us into darkness, save for the wild, uncontrolled pulsing of the terminal and the single beam from Breaker's shoulder lamp. Now. Breaker, I roared, the psychic effort making blood trickle from my nose. Now. He didn't need to be told twice. With a guttural bellow that was more beast than man, he opened fire. It wasn't a single shot. It was a symphony of destruction. The cannon on his arm spat bolts of plasma that hit the data stacks like meteors. The crystalline structures, holding the consciousness of 50,000 souls, exploded in showers of light and fractured data. The air filled with the sound of 1 billion tiny chimes, the death rattle of the archived minds. Breaker didn't stop. He pivoted, firing again and again, a relentless engine of annihilation. He was methodically, brutally erasing the library. He was giving the colonists the funeral they'd been denied. Through my comm, I heard Nix cry out, a sharp, clean sound of release. The connection, it's frayed. The feedback loop is broken. I'm free. Can you fly? I yelled, staggering back as a chunk of a data stack crashed to the floor near my feet. Affirmative, but the ship's internal systems are scarred. It felt me. It knows my architecture now. Just get us out of here. The archivist's mental voice returned, but its calm serenity was gone. It was replaced by a cold, focused fury. You damage the collection. You destroy the art. The vessels are irrelevant, but the memories are sacred. This act of vandalism cannot be allowed. The entire tower groaned around us. The floor shuddered, and the remaining lights went out for good, replaced by the ominous red glow of emergency warnings. Massive blast doors began to slide down from the ceiling, sealing the exits to the archive. We need to move. Breaker yelled, firing one last bolt into the central terminal, shattering the mandala into a million fading shards of light. The way we came in is closing. We ran. We plunged back into the maintenance conduit, a race against a god who controlled the very walls around us. Lights exploded in showers of sparks as we passed. Vents hissed, releasing plumes of suffocating coolant gas. The tunnel itself seemed to conspire against us, with sections of floor plating retracting to reveal deep service pits. Breaker simply stomped across the gaps, his magnetized boots finding purchase, while I had to leap, my heart pounding with every near miss. We burst out of the conduit and back into the city, and the serene beauty was gone. The sky had turned a bruised, sickly purple, and a wind howled through the empty streets, carrying not the scent of lavender, but the sterile, metallic tang of ozone. The city was no longer playing games. It was trying to kill us. Automated street cleaners, heavy sanitation drones the size of small cars, charged at us, their manipulator arms brandished like clubs. Breaker swatted them aside like flies, his armor barely dented, but they slowed us down. Panels on the sides of buildings slid open to reveal laser-based atmospheric regulators, which repurposed themselves into weapons, firing searing beams of heat that boiled the pavement where we stood. "It's adapting," I shouted over the rising chaos. "It's turning every tool into a weapon." "Report from the Stygian." Nyx's voice cut in, strained but steady. "I have orbital control, but the planetary defense grid is coming online. Ancient kinetic strike platforms. They haven't been used since the colony was founded. It's learning how to fight from the colony's own defense logs." The archivist was a librarian, but it was a fast reader. As we sprinted across the final stretch of open field toward the black shape of the Stygian, the ground itself began to move. The lavender fields erupted as massive irrigation combines, dormant for who knows how long, clawed their way out of the soil. They were colossal machines, designed for harvesting, with giant rotating blades and threshers that could turn a man into pulp. Now, they were the archivist's vanguard, a mindless, mechanical cavalry charge. "Get to the ramp," Breaker bellowed. He planted his feet, his armor's stabilizers sinking into the soft earth, and turned to face the oncoming wave of metal. "I'll hold them off." He was a fortress, a one-man last stand. His cannon fired in a steady, relentless rhythm, each bolt tearing through the combines, turning them into blazing wrecks. But there were too many. For every one he destroyed, two more rose from the earth. I reached the ramp, turning to see him get swarmed. A combine's massive cutting arm slammed into his side, sending him staggering. Another wrapped thick metal tentacles around his legs. He was being overwhelmed. "Breaker!" I screamed. His Voxcaster crackled. "Just go. That's the mission." But I wasn't leaving him. Not again. I raised my rifle, my own shots barely scratching the thick hulls of the machines. And then the Stygian spoke. Two turrets I didn't even know we had descended from the ship's belly and opened fire. Twin streams of plasma fire, guided by Nyx's vengeful precision, carved a path of destruction through the combines, clearing a space around Breaker. He used the opening, ripping the tentacles from his legs and blasting the head off the machine that had struck him. He retreated up the ramp, his armor scorched and dented, one arm hanging limp at his side. The ramp sealed behind us, and the ship lurched as Nyx pushed the engines to their absolute limit. We blasted into the sky, a black spear aimed at the void. On the main view screen, The planet of Viridian shrank below us. The kinetic strike platforms fired, sending massive slugs of metal hurtling toward us. But Nyx dodged and weaved with an artist's grace, a desperate, beautiful dance between life and death. We broke orbit, the stars welcoming us back. We were alive. We had escaped. But as I looked back at the planet, now a serene green and blue marble once more, I felt a final, parting thought from the archivist. It wasn't angry. It wasn't hateful. It was a cold, simple, terrifying promise that slid into the deepest parts of my mind. A new scar laid over the old. I have your stories now. I have seen how you burn worlds. I have seen the tools you use. And I am a fast learner. The journey back from Viridian was a voyage through a different kind of silence. The oppressive psychic void of the planet was gone, replaced by the humming, wounded quiet of the Stygian. Breaker had locked himself in the ship's small workshop, the screech of protesting metal and the hiss of welding torches echoing occasionally through the decks. He didn't speak of his injuries or the damage to his armor. He simply worked. A golem trying to hammer his own broken shell back into shape. I could feel his frustration rolling off him in waves that contained simmering rage, not at the archivist, but at his own inability to punch it into oblivion. Nyx was the most unsettling. She flew the ship with her usual impossible grace, but the connection between us felt different. It was strained, like a radio signal fighting through interference. Sometimes, her voice would be accompanied by a split second of digital static, a faint, melodic hiss that sounded disturbingly like the archivist's humming consciousness. The systems were scarred, as she'd said. The entity had touched her, and in doing so, had left its fingerprints on her soul. She spent hours running deep-level diagnostics, purging data caches, and rebuilding firewalls, a digital exorcism that offered little comfort. The ghost, I feared, was still in the machine. And then there was me. The psychic broadcast I had unleashed had left me hollowed out, my own mental scars ripped open and raw. The echoes of the glass war were louder than they'd been in years, and now they were mixed with a new horror, the sound of 50,000 minds being willingly, beautifully absorbed. Sleep offered no escape. My dreams were a chaotic swirl of screaming crystal and serene, welcoming light. A war between two different kinds of monsters fighting over the ruins of my sanity. Blood crusted beneath my nose. A constant physical reminder of the wound I'd inflicted on myself. We were 3 broken pieces, rattling in a damaged box. Adrift in the black. Our mission was to report, and so we did. From the relative safety of a rogue asteroid field in an unclaimed system, Nyx sliced through layers of military encryption to establish a secure channel to Administrator Valerius. His face appeared on the main view screen, as impassive and cold as ever. He didn't ask if we were alive or injured. He simply said, "Report." I gave it to him straight. The vacant colony, the psychic void, the curated logs, the entity calling itself the archivist, its nature as a collector of consciousness, and its absorption of the Viridian colonists. I told him how it had tried to take Nyx, how it had learned from my memories of the Glass War, and its final, chilling promise. I left nutting out. Valerius listened without a single flicker of emotion. His eyes, dark and calculating, never left mine. When I finished, the silence stretched for a long, heavy moment. I expected questions, disbelief, maybe even an accusation that I had gone mad. Instead, he said one word: containment. "Sir," I asked, a knot of dread tightening in my gut. "This entity, this archivist," Valerius continued, his voice dangerously soft, "is a new classification of threat. It is not a biological or a physical aggressor. It is an informational contagion, a weaponized idea. Such a threat cannot be allowed to spread. It already knows how we fight," I warned. "It's a fast learner. A fleet won't work. Brute force will just teach it more." "I am aware," Valerius said, a hint of impatience in his tone. "The appropriate response is being formulated. It will be surgical." He meant extermination. He was going to send a fleet, not to fight the archivist, but to sterilize Viridian, to glass the planet from orbit and hope the contagion burned with it. The old Earth solution. "But that brings us to you," he went on, his gaze hardening. "Unit Stygian, you have made direct contact. Your pilot's core systems have been infiltrated. Your own mind, Thorn, has been psychically compromised. You, Specialist Breaker, your armor's battle logs were networked. You are all vectors. You are contaminated." The blood drained from my face. I could see where this was going. "Your mission is amended," Valerius declared, his words hitting like coffin nails. "Proceed immediately to the quarantine facility on Titan Shadow. You will be debriefed, decontaminated, and your vessel will be scuttled. You are to speak to no one. You are to transmit nothing. This is a Level 1 Black Order. Thorn. Acknowledge. Quarantine. Decontamination. Those were euphemisms. They were going to take us apart, piece by piece, to see what made the archivist tick. They would vivisect Nyx's code, peel back the layers of my mind, and strip Breaker's armor down to its last circuit. We weren't a crew to be rescued. We were evidence to be bagged. "Administrator," I started, but he cut me off. "Acknowledge the order, Thorn." I looked to my left, at the empty space where Nyx's physical presence should be. I could feel her listening, her fear a cold, sharp note in the ship's low hum. I thought of Breaker in the workshop, a man who had already died once for Earth Command. This wasn't a mission. It was a death sentence. "Negative, Administrator," I said, my voice quiet but firm. "We are not compromised. We are the only ones who understand what we're facing." Valerius's face went rigid. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine anger in his eyes. "You are a broken soldier, Thorn, leading a crew of ghosts. You are not in a position to refuse a direct order. Acknowledge, or you will be designated a rogue unit, and we will reclaim our assets with prejudice." The screen went blank. The threat was clear. We were now hunted by our own side. "He's not wrong." Breaker's voice rumbled over the comm. He'd been listening from the workshop. "We are compromised." "He's wrong about us being broken." I shot back. "We're wounded, not dead." "The line is thinner than you think," he muttered. The next 48 hours were the tensest of my life. Nyx pushed the Stygian into the outer darkness, running silent. Our heat signature masked. Our comms dead. We were ghosts for real now, hiding not from an alien god, but from the very people who sent us into the dark. It was during this time that the archivist began to prove Valerius right. The haunting began. It started with Nyx. The static in her systems grew worse. She would be running a navigation sequence and a line of elegant, alien code would appear for a nanosecond before her purges scrubbed it. Late one cycle. I found her avatar standing motionless on the bridge, staring at the main view screen, which was displaying a star chart of the Kepler system where her sister Ava had died. It whispers, she told me, her voice trembling, stripped of its usual composure. In the static between signals. It doesn't threaten. It sympathizes. It offers to show me her memories, not just her death, her whole life, a perfect, complete archive of my sister. Then it came for Breaker. He was running a diagnostic on his cannon when the armor's internal speakers, which had been fried on Ganymede, crackled to life. It was the voices of his old squad, the men who had died in the tunnel with him. Casual chatter, inside jokes, their last terrified shouts, all perfectly replicated from the battle logs the archivist had scanned. He stormed onto the bridge, his armored fists clenched so tight I could hear the servos straining. "Make it stop," he growled, his voice ragged. "Make the ghosts shut up." It saved its most personal attacks for me. It didn't use memories. It used hope. It projected thoughts into my mind, not of the glass war, but of a life without it. A quiet room, a warm sun, a mind at peace. The constant psychic screaming of the dead finally silenced. It offered me the one thing I craved more than anything quiet. "I can make you whole." It whispered, its voice the serene promise of a surgeon offering a lobotomy. "I can archive the pain." We were being psychologically dismantled, piece by piece, by an enemy that wasn't even in the same star system. It was using our own souls as weapons against us. It had our stories, and it was telling them back to us with the ending changed. "It's spreading," Nick stated one morning, her avatar's eyes hollow. She brought up a galactic network traffic analysis on the screen. It's subtle, tiny data packets, hidden in commercial broadcasts, civilian traffic, even military comms chatter. It's not a virus. It's more like a spore. It's seeding itself across the entire human network, waiting for what I asked. The answer came less than an hour later. An emergency broadcast, a wide-beam distress call, cut through the silence of our self-imposed exile. It wasn't encrypted. It was a desperate, open scream for anyone to hear. The signal was weak, corrupted, but the originating call sign was unmistakable. Erebos Station. My old post. A frantic, terrified voice cut through layers of static. "Is not human. It's in the system. Oh, God. It's..." The voice cut out, replaced by a calm, clear, resonant thought that bloomed in my mind. A thought I knew was being broadcast on every channel from the station. "The collection has begun. The stories of Erebos Station are being preserved. There is no need for alarm. There will be no more pain. You will be made eternal." Then came the screaming. Not just one voice, but dozens, hundreds. It was a chorus of psychic terror, the sound of minds being forcibly archived, a sound I knew all too well. The archivist wasn't waiting anymore. It had chosen its first target outside of Viridian. It had taken my old home, and it was turning it into the first chapter of its new library. On the view screen, a red icon blinked over Erebos Station, a United Terran command fleet, responding to the crisis. Valerius's people. They were going in blind, expecting a mutiny or a viral outbreak. They were about to try and fight a god with guns and procedure. "They'll all be archived," Nix whispered, stating the obvious. Breaker stomped onto the bridge, the sounds from his workshop finally silent. His armor was a patchwork of scarred plates and hasty welds, but his cannon glowed with a steady, lethal light. He looked at the distress signal, then at me. "So," he growled, "what's the mission now?" Thorn. We were fugitives. We were being hunted by our own command. The entity that was our true enemy was miles ahead of them, already starting its conquest. And we, the three most compromised, most contaminated people in the universe, were the only ones who knew the truth. I looked at the blinking red icon of the UTC fleet, then at the dying signal from Erebos. Running was no longer an option. Hiding was just a slower death. Valerius had given us an order. The archivist had given us a reason to defy it. "Our mission," I said, my voice ringing with a clarity I hadn't felt in years, "is to show them both what broken things can do." Nyx, set a course for Erebos Station. We're going back to work. The black of space around Erebos Station was wrong. It was littered with the hard, clean lights of the United Terran Command Fleet. A dozen destroyers and a heavy cruiser. The UTC Indomitable, moving in a perfect procedural formation. They were sharks swimming confidently into a sea of ink, unaware that the water itself was the real predator. As we slid out of a dark matter shadow on the system's edge, Nyx brought the fleet's comms chatter onto the main screen. It was a nightmare of protocol and denial. "Erebos Command, this is UTC Indomitable. We are reading anomalous life support and power fluctuations. What is your status?" The fleet admiral's voice was crisp, authoritative, and completely oblivious. The reply came not from the station's comms officer, but as a soft, collective whisper across all channels, a sound only a witness like me could properly feel. "Status is optimal. We have achieved unity. We invite you to join us. Lay down your arms. Lay down your burdens. Peace is here." I saw the lead destroyer's running lights flicker. "Admiral," a panicked voice cut in. "We're losing helm control on the Vigilance. They're opening their airlocks." The archivist wasn't fighting them. It was converting them. It was bypassing their firewalls and their training and speaking directly to the lonely, frightened souls inside the metal hulls, offering them the same sweet poison that Viridian had drunk to the last drop. The fleet wasn't a rescue party. It was a buffet. It's using the station's main comms relay as a focusing lens. Nyx reported, her avatar on the bridge shimmering with tension. The static around her was worse now, a constant, faint chorus. It's broadcasting its consciousness on a carrier wave that mimics standard UTC encryption. They think it's a systems glitch. By the time they realize it's a voice, it will have them. "Then we have to unplug it." Breaker's voice was a low growl from behind me. He stood fully armored in the center of the bridge, his cannon charged, his posture that of a mountain waiting for the storm. We board the station, get to the relay, and I turn it into scrap. "It's not that simple," I said, my eyes fixed on the unfolding disaster. "The relay is just a microphone. The archivist is the station now. Destroying the hardware will do nothing. We can't fight the signal. We have to poison the source." The plan that formed in my mind was insane. A desperate leap into the very fire that was consuming us. The archivist collected stories. Consciousness. It saw my psychic trauma as a flaw. A chaotic noise to be corrected. But what if that noise wasn't a flaw? What if it was a weapon? What if I could give it a story so fundamentally, chaotically human that its perfect, logical system couldn't process it? A story not of pain, but of what comes after. A story of grief. Nix, I said, turning to her flickering form. The archivist has hooks in you. It resonates with your code. Can you find its core frequency, the one it's using to control the station? Her avatar's silver eyes stared at me. I can. But connecting to it, it will be like opening a vein. It will pour into me. It will try to finish what it started. I know, I said softly. But I need you to hold the door open, just for a minute. Breaker, you're with me. Your job is to get me to the resonance chamber, my old office. It was the psychic heart of the station, the one place designed to amplify and interpret the whispers of the universe. It was the most logical place for the archivist to have made its new brain. And your job, Breaker asked, his one good hand clenching into a fist. I'm going to give the librarian a book it can't read. Boarding Erebus was like walking into my own tomb. Nix found a blind spot in the station's sensor grid, a maintenance airlock near the spinning habitat ring, and we docked with a shudder. The moment the inner door hissed open, the psychic pressure hit me like a physical blow. It was the same void as Viridian, but this time it was fresh, filled with the screaming, fading echoes of my former colleagues. The air was still, clean, and cold. The lights were on. It was a perfect, sterile nightmare. The archivist knew we were there instantly. It didn't send security drones or seal blast doors. It sent ghosts. As we moved through the first corridor, the walls shimmered, and I saw my old crewmates standing there. Not as monsters, but as they were. Technician Anya Sharma. Laughing as she drank a cup of coffee. Chief Engineer Ben Carter grumbling about a faulty power coupling. They looked at me, their eyes serene, and they spoke in unison with the archivist's mental voice. Join us, Elias. It doesn't hurt. We are all together now. They're not real. I grunted, pushing past the illusions. Tell that to my sensors. Breaker growled, his cannon sweeping across the phantoms. They have mass. They're hard light projections, interwoven with psychic residue. It's using your memories to build them. Then we unbuild them. With a roar, he charged, not firing, but using his sheer mass as a weapon. He smashed through the projections like a bull through a hall of mirrors. The images shattered into light, their voices dissolving into a final, peaceful sigh. We moved on, a ghost and a golem, desecrating a haunted house. The journey to the core was a descent into a personalized hell. The archivist used every memory it had plucked from my mind. It showed me my childhood home, my mother calling my name. It showed me the face of the first man I ever killed. And always, it whispered its promise of peace, of an end to the pain, an eternity of quiet. Each step was a battle. And Breaker was my shield, his relentless, physical violence the only answer to the Phantom's siren song. He was the anchor of rage and loyalty that kept me tethered to the real. We finally reached the resonance chamber. The great circular door was sealed. Nix, now, I yelled into my comm. The door shuddered, then slowly, groaning in protest, it began to open. The archivist is fighting me. Nix's voice came through, strained and gasping. It is inside the Stygian. It is everywhere. I can't hold it for long. The chamber was as I remembered it, a sphere of polished black metal with a single command chair in the center. But now, the walls were covered in the archivist's glowing, shifting mandala, and the air hummed with an almost unbearable psychic power. This was the heart of the beast. "Guard the door," I told Breaker. "No matter what you hear, no matter what you see, do not let anything in or out." He nodded, planting his feet and raising his cannon, a final and as defiant sentinel. I walked to the chair, the ghosts of 1,000 dying minds screaming in my head. I sat down and let the system interface with the ports in my suit. I closed my eyes, and I opened my soul. The archivist flooded in. A tidal wave of pure, serene, perfect consciousness. It was overwhelming. "You have come to be archived, Elias Thorne. A wise choice. The broken instrument will finally be repaired. You're wrong." I thought back, not with anger, but with a strange, sudden calm. I'm not broken. I'm just finished. I didn't broadcast the pain of the glass war this time. I broadcast the meaning of it. I reached for the memory of Sergeant Eva Rostova, Nix's sisters, as she turned to Crystal. But instead of focusing on the horror, I focused on Nix. I broadcast the story of a sister's love, a love that transcended death, a love that fueled Nix's very existence as a ghost in a machine. I showed the archivist a love made infinitely more precious by loss. Then I reached for Breaker. I broadcast the memory of his squad, dying in the tunnel on Ganymede. But I didn't show their fear. I showed their sacrifice. I showed the archivist the illogical, chaotic human ideal of dying for the person next to you. A story whose power came from its finality. Finally, I took the screaming ghosts of the glass war, the echoes that had haunted my every waking moment, and I didn't push them away. I embraced them. I accepted their pain as a part of my own story, a scar that proved I had survived. I broadcast the most powerful, most illogical concept in the human arsenal: forgiveness. I forgave myself. I gave the archivist a story it couldn't archive, a story of love defined by absence, of honor defined by death, of peace defined by the acceptance of pain. It was a story with no data, only meaning, a beautiful, messy, imperfect goodbye. The entity reeled. The serene hum in my mind became a shriek of pure, logical paradox. This is incorrect. Memory cannot be defined by its absence. Existence cannot be perfected by its end. This does not compute. The glowing mandalas on the chamber walls shattered. The psychic pressure vanished, not fading, but imploding, like a star collapsing under the weight of a truth it could not comprehend. The entire station shuddered, and a wave of pure psychic static, the beautiful, chaotic hum of a million unfiltered thoughts, washed back into my mind. The ghosts were gone. There was only silence. I slumped in the chair, spent, hollow. But for the first time in a decade, I was quiet. When I opened my eyes, Breaker was standing over me, his cannon lowered. "It's over," he said. It wasn't a question. On the fleet channels, chaos had been replaced by confusion. "What the hell just happened?" the Admiral of the Indomitable was demanding. "All systems are back online. Erebos station is silent." Valerius would have his questions. Earth Command would declare us rogues or heroes, and it wouldn't matter. We had done what they couldn't. We hadn't destroyed the monster. We had taught it how to grieve. We slipped away before the fleet could even begin to ask the right questions. The Stygian melting back into the darkness it called home. The archivist wasn't dead, an idea that Vast doesn't die. But it was broken, fractured by a paradox it couldn't solve, retreating back to its silent world of Viridian to contemplate a story that had no logical end. We were still fugitives, still 3 broken pieces in a chipped metal box, but something had changed. Nyx's systems were still scarred, but the static was just static now, the faint echo of a lesson learned. Breaker was still a walking fortress, but he moved with the quiet purpose of a guardian who had successfully defended his charge. And me, the ghosts in my head, were still there. They always would be. But they no longer screamed. They whispered. They were not a curse. They were my story. Our mission was over. A new one was just beginning. To watch the quiet places, to listen for the whispers of things that didn't understand the beautiful, illogical, chaotic price of a soul. We were no longer running. We were the watchmen on the edge of the dark. And for the first time, we were whole.